Ravichandran, can you tell us a little bit, because we're excited to hear, here in Houston, we're excited to hear about this secular movement in Kerala, the esSENSE, and maybe can you tell us a little bit about that?
Thank you. We have a very vibrant secular atheist movement in Kerala, and you rightly named it esSENSE Global. And we have been conducting programs from 2016 onward, and we have an annual program called Litmus, normally attended by 7,000 to 10,000 people, and it's in democratic in its preferences because we take care of all people who want to be skeptical and to have a materialistic worldview. And I think it's doing the trick for us in Kerala, because Kerala is basically a society divided on caste, communal and party lines. It's almost like a slavish adherence to, as you mentioned. So what we do is to detribalize Kerala society and to make them more responsive to the realities around, and more stress on individualism. One of our slogan is individual is important. That is one slogan that Kerala society was almost unfamiliar with till then, I mean in 2016 onwards, and our stress on individualism is paying rich dividends, and I'm very happy about it.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Are there similar secular groups in other states of India, or is this so is esSENSE itself in other states?
I think Kerala is exceptional in the case of free thinking and atheism. Other states of India, I think the scope is lesser and lesser, especially the North India. I think it's more communal in character, their politics, and nationalism is having a setback. Ever since, in the first program, the speaker referred to Nehru, Jawaharlal Nehru. During his time, we had a skeptical attitude, especially the prominent politicians. They maintained that line of thinking. But now we are getting more and more superstitious, communal, and regressive in character. And Kerala is an exception, I can say. It's not a general rule.
From what I've read, which isn't that much, Kerala is exceptional in many ways. But does esSENSE in Kerala sometimes do any interfaith type work where you have people working with maybe people who are religious but they're open-minded or something?
In fact, we do not do that because I personally believe that if you reform religion and that religion gets stronger and survive into the next generation, and actually reformation is a kind of technique by which religions survive. So if we try to make that kind of a change, that will only expand the religious base and it will remain forever. So we challenge the doctrinal base of religion and wanted to make people de-religious rather than lesser and less religious, rather than making it more adaptable and more acceptable for the population. So I don't believe in that. That's why interfaith conferences strict no in our syllabus.
And maybe kind of a long preface, but one of my theories is that in the United States, churches meet needs of people that aren't really, some of them are about religion, a lot of them are, but a lot of the things they do are really about psychology and sociology, the need for community, the need to have a connection when a loved one dies, or a place to get married, a place to bring your baby and say, all that. One of the things that I see happening in the secular communities is we don't want to do anything that reminds us of our former religion. And my fear is that that may keep us, and there's a tremendous opening. I used a simple set of numbers based on the percentage of nuns in the United States, NONES. My estimate is that here in Houston we have 2 million prospects for secular groups. We have an outstanding group at Houston Oasis. The people are incredible. I sense that same thing here. But we're not coming anywhere close to reaching the numbers. And so that raises a lot of questions. And one of them is, well, once we leave, do we need anything? Do we need a group? My feeling is we do. And we really need to learn how to do those sociological things. Or here in America, if we don't, it offers religion an opportunity, as you were just talking about, to tweak itself, get a little more secular, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, your thoughts on any of that I'd be interested in.
That's a very good question. Community living is always very important because we are very tribal right from the beginning. We used to fight and flee together and collect food and all that togetherness is something that religion may exploit on a huge scale. Tribalism, we can say that. But atheism can be formed on a tribal basis, a community, mass gatherings and all like that. I think it's a very difficult question to answer. And most of the people, when they ask a question, we are ready to get out of religion. What you would give in return? What is a replacement for that? So normally we answer that it's a kind of malady, a kind of anomaly you are recovering from. You don't need anything in return. You only need the recovery. Because something like a smoking or alcoholism or drugs, and you get out of that, what do you need in return? That's a question I ask in my public meetings. So we cannot provide a kind of community living to the general mass as religions do. But at the same time, my understanding is that if you are stressing more and more on individual freedom and love each other, care for each other, and first you love yourself and you become an equipped unit to help and love others. In that way, more of individualism in society, the community feeling can be minimized to some extent, so that a community on the basis of a sense of equality rather than togetherness can be promoted. That's what I believe. But anyway, it's an emotional question, but still we are struggling to find out the answer for that.
No, that's really fascinating, and I respect that particular approach. The reason I'm interested in, and I speak only for myself here, the reason I'm interested in, and maybe the word interfaith is the wrong word, but even if I disagree with a Christian or a Muslim or a Hindu or somebody who has some other faith, as a humanist, and I consider myself an atheist and an agnostic, actually, because I think those two terms are not incompatible with each other. But they're not my preferred terms. My preferred term for myself is a secular humanist, with an emphasis on the word humanist, really. In other words, if a person has a different faith than I do, they're just as human as they were, even when they had a different faith or whatever, or they're just as human as I am. And so I can approach the individual, as you were saying, on the basis of humanity, on the basis of their humanness. And the reason I think that's helpful is because there's plenty of people I've run into as a secular person, plenty of people I've run into, and these are people who haven't had much exposure to other thinking, people who have never knowingly met a non-believer. Now, of course, they have met non-believers, but they didn't know that they were non-believers, right? So sometimes when people I like to be open but not arrogant about my non-belief, and I figure that that's part of being visible as a secular person. It's critical that those of us who are secular, that we're open about it and that it's visible and we're out there, we're doing things, we're rubbing shoulders with people, and they see that we're not bad people. And so for me, the interfaith, although I put that in quotes because, like I said, I don't really have a faith. I have a faith in humanity. I guess you could say that's a faith. But I like the idea of doing good works with other folks, and I don't really care what they believe. And I think they're going to be a little bit intrigued with the fact that someone else has a different way of going about things, and yet that person who doesn't believe is doing good works and cares about people, and maybe it makes it feasible for them to consider some of the things we're saying. But I respect your perspective also of wanting to not reform, not help religions. I get that.
So, well, first I want to say that Richard is one of the most Christ-like men I know. Now, it's really, the Christ that was portrayed in the New Testament as being giving and ministering, this is a guy that really helps people, for real, and I respect that about you so much. What I wanted to say, though, taking some of what you've shared, there's some feedback here. Okay. Some of the talks you've heard today, I've heard things about in India dealing with superstition, and I'd like to kind of play for you my mental processing about everything I've heard today and what I've just heard you say, and I'd like you to tell me what you think about it, no holds barred. Think of it. Well, let me just say this. I think it'll make sense. So what I've heard today is that in some parts of India, anyway, you're still battling with actual superstition. And I know Sai gave a talk recently. He's from another part of India, right?
Yes.
And he talked about being here, and when there's an eclipse, you don't have to do X or something. So like that's I think was the first thing that got me thinking about this. So here's what I'm thinking. So you're in a place where the difference between modern rational thinking and what is happening in religious thought is so dramatic that you can't afford to make concessions and to try to talk to each other. And now, bear with me here, but here, our religion isn't so, maybe it's advanced a little more, blah, blah, blah. But then as soon as I say that to myself, I think, no, I'm being too easy on our religious culture here. So I don't know, anything you can say to shed any light on what I'm saying or thinking. I don't know if it even makes any sense, but if it doesn't, I'll try again.
You say your religion is less superstitious compared to Indian religions?
Here it comes. I see it coming. Let me have it. I'm not in it anymore, so go all the way.
I really do not think so. Because Indian religion, especially Hindu religion, it's so complicated and so varied and so diverse that you can pick up any kind of superstitious bullshits there. It's a supermarket. And Christianity can be unidimensional in that, in relation to Hinduism. But how do you deal with the superstitions? Actually, religion is a supermarket of superstitions. You take items from there, one after another. Finally, the supermarket will be empty. So you touch one, and the other is also affected. So it's actually, what we do is, in our constitution, there's a provision, 51H of Indian Constitution. That's come under the fundamental duties of citizens. India is perhaps the only country in the world which demands the citizens of the country to promote scientific spirit of inquiry, humanism, and reform. No other country, I don't know any other country which demands the citizens to be like that.
Is the word humanism?
Yeah, humanism is also there. It actually came into our constitution in 1976 through a constitutional amendment. And esSENSE, whatever program that we conduct, we start with this Article 51H. That's our motto. And I come back to some observations you made. You say the hurt hypothesis. I do not want to hurt a person who is a believer and I wanted to communicate. Sir, we do the same thing. In esSENSE meetings, we have a slogan called hit the ball, not the leg. Okay? The people can be changed. A Muslim can be a Hindu. He can be converted to an atheist. So the software is very important, not the people. This is something like a PC, a computer. So you change the OS, and we are trying to change the OS. We have utmost regard for the individual. We don't want to, we are aggressive and passionate. Doesn't mean that we are hostile and violent. Yeah. We don't want to foul-mouth people. We don't want to abuse people. We wanted to have a kind of what I say, kite flying, flying kites. We are grounded, and the kites are flying for height. So there is no collision between we people, but the kites are flying. This is our attitude. We are promoting atheism and faith in Kerala very aggressively. We say, I normally say, I'm very atheist. Okay, if it hurts somebody, I don't mind, because you cannot make omelette without breaking it. Okay, so a minimum passion and aggression is required. Otherwise, what happens is, all over India, you can see this kind of reconciliation and adjustment, accommodation is happening. And there you can see that the society is clouded by religion and dominated by religion. There is no scope whatsoever, because you can only say second fiddle to religion. And here what we see is, we take it on. But what I say is, very, very calm, peaceful, and mutual respect is there. But still, a bit of aggression is there.
I actually like what you're saying. In the U.S., we have Episcopalians. I'm going to pick them as a group. I can think of an Episcopal church downtown by the medical center. People that go there are medical doctors, NASA people, highly educated. And if you talk to the people that go to that church, a lot of their views on reality and social issues, political issues are very similar to ours, because over the centuries they've jettisoned more and more of traditional Christianity. So my question is, do you have that phenomena? And I'm not really, actually I like what you're saying, and I'm largely agreeing with you, but I'm curious, do you have sort of those liberal groups that have morphed way away from where they started and therefore feel like they're more a group that you can talk to and maybe try to vote together or do something together?
There is no dearth of liberal groups in Kerala. All over India, we have, they are in majority. They are having what I say is a very cordial relation with the religion, and they even work for religion. They promote religious interests, right from politics to NGOs. I think they are madly in love with religion. So there is no scarcity of liberal groups who are very, very friendly to religion in India or in Kerala. But we are exceptional. That's why we are actually getting this attention and acceptance. That's what I believe. And because liberal groups are, there are many, but they are not growing, they are not making any impact. They are only the one-way traffic is they support religion, become a part of religion, an extended arm of religion.
A recent estimate I read on the expected lifetime of the Episcopal Church in America is about 25 years, because their average age is in the 60s. So, and I think they've defanged their beliefs to the point that they don't really attract many new believers. Were we supposed to talk about left and right wing international issues? Was that?
It's okay.
He says yes. Okay. Can I shift this, or we want to talk about this some more? Okay. So I don't know. I feel like I'm really out of my league here, and I'm honored to sit with these guys and with you guys. But one of the things, after I left my faith and I started reading, it's like the fences guardrails came off my brain. I was looking everywhere for new information. But one of the things I noticed is that here in America, we're bad about just treating this like, this is the world, and we don't always look out across the oceans as much as we should. But I started noticing that there are left-wing and right-wing political groups in other parts of the world. And so the question is, and I've done some reading, Richard may have more to say about this, and I don't, but there is a theory that humans have brain differences, and that's why in a country that has very little in common with another country on the other side of the world, there's something about some people's brain. I mean, it's like a large dividing line where, and the thing that's singled out is it's a greater capacity for fear. I've read one writer who theorizes that the amygdala, that part of the brain, the reptile part of the brain, is larger in people who tend to be more right-wing politically. So I think that was the idea, that we bat that around. So with that introduction, either of you have anything you'd like to say?
Okay, cerebral differences among human beings. Of course, it's even if it is there, even if it's confirmed, I think we are actually working on a social frame rather than a biological or cerebral. If there are some clear-cut cerebral divisions or leanings, of course, that's a fact on the basis of which we have to operate. So, hard facts in science always taken care of when you are actually promoting this free thinking and atheism and all like that. So I think whatever changes, discoveries, inventions, realization in the field of science, and that should be taken care of when you are spreading the message of free thinking. How difficult for people to come to our worldview. So that should be taken care of. But that's a different question, but still.
Well, the brain, as you know, is a moderately complicated thing. And some people say it's the most complicated thing in the universe. There's no way we can back that up, of course, but the most complicated known thing in the universe. But in the case of the amygdala and politics and that sort of thing, you may have heard about imaging studies that were done on London taxi drivers. Has anybody heard about these studies? Yeah. So when they look, because it used to be, it probably isn't true anymore because we have GPS and stuff, but it used to be true that you could not become an official London taxi driver unless you passed an exam that showed that you knew where every single street in London was and how to get there. You could not become a cab driver. Obviously an amazing feat, but plenty of people did it, but they could study their brains before they learned all this and afterwards, and they could see structural changes, which shouldn't surprise us too much because you're literally putting more stuff in there and it has to go somewhere, and you get things rewired and so on and so forth. And so one of the challenging things with this amygdala question is, the brain, it turns out, is more plastic, that is to say, more capable of change than we used to believe. And so it's hard to know, again, what came first, the chicken or the egg. And the real answer is that sometimes it was the chicken and sometimes it was the egg, right? So sometimes a person may be born with an amygdala that predisposes that individual to being more fearful of, let's say, strangers and things like that. But we've also seen that the things we learn also change the brain. And so it can go in either direction, and then what happens, and so I tend to think, as we learn more about how plastic the brain is, if a person's given an opportunity, as you alluded to, Ravichandran, to learn different things, then that can include being less fearful, for example, of ideas that seemed alien, or people with those ideas that seemed alien. Now, one thing I would say is I think we also have a need to feel that somebody else is not a threat. And I imagine much of the work, maybe most of the work you do in Kerala would be in Malayalam, and I don't speak Malayalam except for the 6-7 words that I did a bad job with this morning. But in English at least, the word aggressive and the word assertive carry two different connotations. And I think it is terribly important for secular folks to be, as I said, highly visible. People need to know that there is a secular alternative and that it's a reasonable thing to consider. And so we need to be assertive about that. But at least in English, many people will misinterpret the word aggressive or aggression because that commonly carries overtones of violence with it. And I think if we're trying to convince people of the reasonableness of our views, and that we are not simply atheists or agnostics, but that we're also compassionate, we're humanistic, as it says in the Indian Constitution I learned today. So I would say we want to be assertive and highly visible and yet visibly compassionate. Because that's the kind of thing, it's kind of like with Martin Luther King Jr. in this country and Gandhi and some others in other countries, when your behavior in the face of unreasonable policies surprises people because you're nonviolent and so on and so forth. I remember as a kid, seeing for the first few times the recordings of the speeches of Martin Luther King, where he was saying to the racists who were beating black people down and that kind of thing, and his response, and you may have seen it's one of the greatest speeches, and he said, and if you do such and such, we'll still love you. And if you do such and such, we will still love you. It was exactly the opposite of what you would expect, and that's what woke up white America to recognize that, wait a minute, this is unusual for someone to have the capacity, and nonviolence, as you know, isn't something that we're born with. It's a skill. It's a learned process, So I don't know. I guess that's one thing, and I'm not going to give advice because you've obviously done very well in Kerala and in other places, including here. But I don't know. I would say you want to be visibly compassionate. You want to be highly visible, and not back down. Not back down when somebody says things that are silly, which they often do. So okay, I'll shut up.
Okay. One comment on the use of word aggression. When you might have noticed when I said aggressive but not violent, see, then I also used the word passionate. So passion, aggression. Aggression means just you're furthering an idea in a 100% commitment. You are not hurting in the sense that even if you try to talk about atheists, some people are hurt for no reason. Religion is actually an emotional concept. It's an emotional accumulation in your brain. And their doctrines are questioned. There is every chance that they are hurt. So a minimum, something like a Shylockian dilemma. Some blood will come out. So because we are performing a cerebral surgery. So that's why, change is a very important thing. You talk to people in a, non-violent, of course we are non-violent, but non-aggressive and placating manner for long. After 1 or 2 years, you still see the person who you are talking to is at the same place. There isn't much change, and he thinks that you are in agreement with him. And that's why the friendship grows. The camaraderie is more and more developed, but there isn't any change. On the score column is nil.
So what about visible compassion? Are you positive, neutral? How do you feel about that?
Yes, compassion is every human being is capable of it's a cerebral quality. There isn't any difference between atheist or agnostic or religious people. We are moral, we are compassionate, we are empathetic. These are our inherent qualities, and we have to make use of it to the best advantage as far as the social requirements are concerned. So I don't think that humanists have an extra bone in that respect. We are equal. Cerebrally, we are equally equally equipped to show all these great qualities, human qualities.
I may be wrong, but it sounds like that the way you're using the word aggressive and the way you're using the word assertive, I think you're saying kind of the same thing, but I don't know.
Yes, probably is. It's linguistic rather than ideological. Remember the kite flying analogy I used. It's not between people.
Yeah, now I will say that I completely agree with your suggestion that, let's say in the face of interacting with people who are religious and who are even pushing religious ideas, including religious ideas in policy, which happens a lot in the United States, for example, I think it is important, to be assertive, as I said, and to because I certainly, you use the example of somebody who a couple years later still thinks that that you agree with them and that kind of stuff. And you're right, it's absolutely critical that not be the case. And that's why I believe in being visibly secular. And I think by working with other people and yet being very open, including your message on your T-shirt or whatever it is, so T-shirts can be a nice way of getting the point across. And so yeah, I think it's terribly important to not be passive in our secularism, such that a person could misinterpret and think that we agree with stuff that we think is not logical. So, any thoughts from people in the audience? Or
I've got another question. So I'm excited about what you're doing, and today is a great day for me to be here and to learn and to listen. My question is, several of us here are from Houston Oasis, and I don't want this to sound like this is a two-way street, but is there any way we can help your movement in India, and is there any way you can help us? Or do we just need to work at our own, where we are, and be independent?
I think from the conversation, the idea I get is the promotion of free thinking and atheism in our societies looks to be two different ball games, because your society is on a different plane compared to the society of Kerala. So I think horses for courses, and we are doing well there because I think we gauge the social temperament and the social climate there, the cultural equations there. And your question is whether it can be is of any use in America. I do not know, because different situations and different equations. That's normally we do. But what we normally say essentially is one and the same thing. Here even, how do you inject this idea? He said there should not be any hurt, there should not be any pain. Then I said there should be some minimum pain, there should be a bit of like that. That's the only difference I say, but we are saying the one and the same thing most of the times. A naturalistic worldview, and the clutches of religion should be removed and it be minimized, and its role should be reduced, and secularism should be promoted. I think the nicer points can be followed, can be imitated, or can be taken care of. But at the same time, the model working there may not be working here. And your model is so, I think, too sophisticated, I think, that can be of any impact in Kerala, because religion will find it as a lullaby. Like, they will think that, oh, this is good, very good to hear. something like that. So I think there is a bit of difference. Social climates are different. So, of course, there are general points we can say, but in the granular details, I think we need to be different to be successful. Okay, this the question on religious nationalism or the right-wing politics, as you call it. But it's not truly religious in character, but at the same time they have a diligent mixture of culture and religion, tradition, and a set of things, a chain of things. But actually, if you take the case of India, religion was the founding rock of Indian politics right from the beginning. Ever since we evolved to have a national politics, the very first reasons were religious, and that's how people were motivated to protest against the British. And every time a big event happens in Indian politics, the color is religion, or religious color is always there, whether it is the destruction of Babri masjids or the live telecast, not the telecast of Ramayana, Mahabharata serials. They made big changes in Indian politics. Now we have a center right-wing party called the Bharatiya Janata Party. It's having the third successive government. Now, before this program, they were heading for a thumping victory as per the exit polls, but the results were not as people normally expected, and they lost their majority, and now they are able to form the government for the third time with the support of some other parties. So there is a change, there is a kind of minor deviation, but the problem in India is BJP is actually stressing on this culture, Arsha Bharatam, then Hindu faith like Lord Ram and Hanuman, so many things like that, then constructing temples. But at the same time, there is a counter-communalism. Communal politics always anticipates counter-communalism. In India, the counter-communalism in the form of Islamism. In 1947, the country became two actually, on the basis of religion, the Muslim Pakistan and Hindu Indian. In 1971, the Muslim Pakistan divided into two on the basis of culture and language. Like the Pakistanis were Urdu-speaking people, and the Bangladeshis were Bengalis. So the country were initially divided on religious lines. The secondary division was on cultural and linguistic base. So it's a combination actually. Still it is working. Now they have taken a backseat, I think. The cultural nationalism is having a lesser impact in this election. But I don't think it is permanent. It can come back because whenever the majoritarianism is having a problem in India, you can see that the counter-communalism is on the up. Then what happens is they come back. So they complement each other. So America, I don't think that America or anywhere the situation is the same. It's a different kind of things. Maybe, perhaps, religious nationalism. The best example is in Palestine. There's no difference between nationalism and religion there. It's a full handshake, 100%. But you don't call it a religious nationalism because we have different definitions for that. And maybe perhaps in Italy, Giorgia Meloni, or even in Russia, Vladimir Putin and the Orthodox Russian Church. But I don't think that they fit the real definition of religious nationalism. It's different things in different countries and societies, as you say. What you happen in America in the form of Trump and all like that, I don't think that it is that really connected with what is happening in India or in Palestine. So I don't think that we can put everything under one umbrella there.
That's true. There are certainly big differences, and we need to learn about those. We have the word communal in American English, because there are different kinds of English all over the world, of course. But we don't really use the term communalism very much. So what do you mean in the Indian and Kerala context when you say communal or communalism?
Oh, yes, that's a very good question. Communalism here is a positive word, right? A bit of positive.
It's not really used very much at all.
Communalism means, for example,
Are you saying communism or communalism?
communalism. Communalism simply means I vote for a candidate simply because he belongs to my religion. So I am communal. I cry for a person who is injured or dead simply because that person belongs to my religion. I protest, I shout slogans for people simply because those people belong to my religion. Then you are communal. And individual is communal, parties are communal, government become communal. It's a very, very bad word in India. Especially in Kerala, you're called Vargiyavadi. And that means ultimate abuse.
So let's wind up this. We have a Q&A session dedicated for Ravichandran C later. So from the audience, if there is any question for Team Sledge or Richard Andrews, that can come out now. And I can see that Mr. Ravichandran is already struggling with his cough. So I don't want him to speak now so that he can be available to speak later on his session. There is a dedicated Q&A for them. So from the audience, if there is a question for the two gentlemen on the other side. Sorry.
Thank you.